Hey guys, it's Miss Landry, and we're going to start our dive into clinical psychology by talking about mood disorders. And there's another term that I want to make sure you know, which is affect. Affect. And affect, when it comes to psychology, also means emotion, and it can mean like mood, basically. And so, for example, if I say something like, oh, that person has a flat affect, I'm basically saying that, like, I can't tell their emotions because their affect is very flat. They have no emotions showing. I can't tell their mood from how they're acting. So sometimes these mood disorders are also called affective disorders, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. So what I'm going to do is go through the two main ones, which are major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. So let's start with major depressive disorder. I want you to think about, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can write a little easier. I want you to think about your day. Just think about a single day in your life. And during the day, if I put like a scale here, right? You have extremely sad on one side, but then you can also have extreme elation or happiness on another side. And throughout the day, you basically kind of move within here, right? Like you might be really sad, got some sad news, so you're kind of here, but then something good happens, and now you're up here, but then something brings you back. So during the day, during the week, during the year, during your life, basically, you're going to be moving around on this scale. But when it comes to depression, especially major depressive disorder, there's lots of differences to that kind of shifting around of where you are on the scale. So let's start with a few of the symptoms. First of all, the depression can come on suddenly. So or it can take time. So there's not a specific etiology of how depression happens. It's often a sudden depression that just hits. And when that happens, you could also have a really severe response that is kind of outside of what you would expect for the circumstances, right? So, maybe your ice cream falls off of your ice cream cone and that sends you into this awful spiral. And your response to that is really beyond and too severe for what the actual circumstance is. You also have a situation where there may not be a cause for the depression. So no external reason for being kind of to the left side of that scale and extremely sad. If you wanted to ask somebody who had depression what it would feel like, a lot of them say the same thing. They'll say there's no joy in activities, and even activities that they used to do and would bring them a lot of joy, they just aren't finding joy in that. They have a lot of guilt and shame in their life. A lot of times that guilt and that shame are not attached to anything. They just feel this overwhelming sense of guilt and worthlessness. They have a very high level of exhaustion. So everything just takes a lot of energy to do. Something as simple as getting up and taking a shower can be a goal for the day for those people. There's sleep disruptions. So either they will sleep a lot more or they will have trouble sleeping. Their diurnal cycle, so their day-night cycle, could get kind of messed up. Their appetite and the weight can change. So for example, some people might actually gain a lot of weight. Some others with depressive disorder could lose a lot of weight. It really just depends on the person. Now, this can lead to, obviously, thoughts of suicide. I don't know why. Oh, hang on. And suicide, it's in your age group, so age 15 to about 32. Unfortunately, suicide is now the number 2 cause of leading cause of death, which is, if you think about it, that's really, we got to fix this. So I'm hoping those of you that are interested in psychology, this could be an area that you really start to look at. It's really interesting also that of the people who commit suicide, 90%, when they look back at the medical records, have some type of psychological disorder, in which depression is usually the most common. So depression definitely can be a risk factor for suicide. And as I'm talking about it, I want to make sure that you guys have, if you know of anyone or even for yourself, 1-800-273-TALK. Or you can also go to the website Suicide Prevention Lifeline.org, just to get some help. Please make sure that you really, if you know of anyone or even for yourself, you just get the help that you need, because it seems like anybody who has had thoughts of suicide, when they don't commit suicide, later on they are very, very happy that they did not, as are their families, I'm sure you can imagine. Now, you've probably heard of something else called SAD, which stands for Seasonal Affective Disorder. This is kind of a sub-unit of depression, which happens based on seasons. And winter is definitely the main culprit. So the research is showing that when there's lower amounts of light hitting the eye, especially natural light, not just like light bulb light, that it definitely affects the frontal lobe and the limbic system. And now you guys know, because you're such awesome students, that this is an area that controls emotion and mood, both of those. So you can see how, if light does affect it, that could be a problem. However, there has been some recent research that is showing that that is actually not the case. Some of the research doesn't actually support this causation, and so we're thinking it could be correlation and not causation. So remember, be very careful with causation. I do want to say one more thing about depression when it comes to gender. So it's really interesting to me that there's about a 1.5 times higher incidence of depression in females versus males. And this is across cultures. This is not just in Western cultures. And that, there's a lot of theories behind this. Some have to do with hormones and changes in hormones, but some of the research is not showing that. So this is another area of study that could really use your brains on it. It could also be expectations. It could be who knows what. Maybe women overthink, females overthink. But the truth is, there is definitely a difference. Now that gender difference does reduce after college. After college, that difference, actually the gender difference drops to 0. So that's it for depression. In the next video, we will talk about bipolar. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, it's Miss Landry, and in the last video you learned about major depressive disorder. Now we're going to move on to the second mood disorder, which is bipolar. Whoops. There are 2 different types of bipolar, so I'm going to talk about each one separately. So I want to first start, and remember when we were talking about depression, we talked about how there could be like this scale, right? Like a spectrum, and on one side is extreme sadness, and then on the other side is absolute euphoria and happiness and joy. And depression tends to be down on this end, right? You could kind of think of major depressive disorder as unipolar. And it's sometimes called that, actually, unipolar disorder. Bipolar means you have two different poles of emotion and mood, right? So let's start with bipolar 1. Bipolar disorder 1 tends not to have the depression side. So it has what we call normal emotions, right? So if you think about bipolar 1 is kind of being from like the normal emotions that people feel up through euphoria, this is what bipolar 1 is on the right-hand side of the scale. So they have these moments of what is called mania or manic episodes. And this is extreme elation. And the symptoms of this can include grand and sometimes delusional plans, right? So, for example, if I am in a manic phase of my bipolar 1, I might decide that I am going to write the next great novel, right? And so I have this delusional plan that if I start writing, I'm going to write the most amazing thing. Or I might decide I'm going to repaint my entire house in one day. So these plans that you have often are not possible to do by one person. You'll often see that they have what seems like unlimited energy. They just go and go and go, kind of like the little Energizer bunny rabbit. They can sometimes seem silly, but if they're kind of held back from what they want to do, they can also seem aggressive because that energy has to go somewhere. A lot of times people in a manic state can be very, very creative. And a lot of times, though, what will happen is all of this creativity and this energy is then going to be shut down because of a lack of organization. Sorry about the tapping of my pen. I'm trying to squeeze it in there. Okay, so, they have these grand ideas and this great, amazing plans, but then their inability to stick with something because of this mania and this manicness causes them to kind of lose track of what they're doing. Now, if we look again at the scale and we talk about bipolar disorder 2, this is the one where, you're normally here in this normal emotional range, but you have episodes of depression and you have episodes of absolute joy. Now, the joy is not quite the manic phase that you would see in bipolar 1. Here it's actually called hypomania. Hypo meaning below. So it's just below that crazy manic phase that you would see in bipolar 1. So you have like this elevated mood. It's just not quite all the way up to manic. There are some actors and some famous people who have come out as being diagnosed with bipolar. One of them is Demi Lovato. She's been actually really open about her struggles with having been diagnosed with this disorder, bipolar disorder. Now, I'm not sure if she has bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. I believe she has bipolar 2 because I have heard of some of her depressive symptoms. So I think that is what she has. It's believed that Kurt Cobain might have had it. Winston Churchill, believe it or not, they believe Winston Churchill may have been bipolar. So there's lots of famous people that have, and oftentimes they're very creative people. So that's it for bipolar. In the next video, we are going to go over causes for these mood disorders. Thanks, and talk to you soon.